In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, July 21st, here in Capital Seoul. North Korea's Defense Minister Kang Sun-nam says the recent deployment of a U.S. nuclear-capable submarine to South Korea's port city of Busan provides his country with legitimate ground for a nuclear weapons response. And top nuclear envoys of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan meet in Tokyo and highlight the importance of cracking down on illicit activities that fund North Korea's hostile weapons ambitions. Meanwhile, Seoul's Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho vows to hammer out a comprehensive financial support plan for all those affected by the deadly downpours in recent days. South Korea has warned yet again that a nuclear weapons assault by North Korea will result in the demise of the regime itself. The latest warning follows North Korea's claim that the docking of a U.S. nuclear-armed submarine here in South Korea is reason enough for a nuclear retaliation. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korea's defense ministry responded to North Korea's warning of nuclear retaliation with a warning of its own on Friday. The ministry said that just as South Korea and the U.S. made it clear during the NCG meeting, North Korea will face an immediate, overwhelming, and decisive response in the event of any North Korean nuclear attack against the alliance that will result in the end of the North Korean regime. North Korea has heavily criticized the docking of the USS Kentucky, a nuclear-capable strategic submarine in South Korea, and the launch of the South Korea-U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group as a blatant and direct nuclear threat. North Korea's Defense Minister Kang Sun-nam, in a press statement released by North Korea's state-run Korea Central News Agency on Thursday, called the situation the most serious stage of the U.S. planning and executing a nuclear strike against DPRK. He added that the DPRK's law on nuclear force allows them to take a necessary course of action when it is clear that a nuclear weapons attack on the country has been carried or is imminent. Kang emphasized that the deployment of strategic weapons such as the nuclear-capable submarine falls under the conditions of North Korea's nuclear doctrine that allows the use of nuclear weapons in retaliation. He also said that using military force against North Korea will lead to disastrous consequences for both South Korea and the United States. The USS Kentucky arrived in the southeastern port city of Busan on Tuesday, the first port call from a U.S. ballistic missile submarine in Korea in 40 years. On the same day, the first meeting of the South Korea-U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group was held in Seoul. The Pentagon responded to the statement on the previous day, saying that the submarine's port call to Busan was a planned military exercise stemming from South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to Washington in April, emphasizing that the move was part of its commitment to extended deterrence in response to North Korea's continued nuclear threats. The port visit was also referred to as a representation of South Korea and the U.S.'s ironclad commitment to defense. The Pentagon also said that South Korea and the U.S.'s efforts to protect their citizens from North Korean nuclear threats do not violate UN Security Council resolutions, unlike North Korea's nuclear provocations. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Over in Tokyo back on Thursday, top nuclear delegates representing South Korea, the U.S. and Japan have reaffirmed their commitment to cracking down on illicit financial flows to fund North Korea's weapons of mass destruction. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji reports.
South Korea's top nuclear envoy Gov't has highlighted the need to strengthen trilateral cooperation between the U.S. and Japan to cut off illicit funding for North Korea's ballistic missile and weapons programs. He said this while holding a trilateral meeting in Tokyo on Thursday afternoon with his American and Japanese counterparts, Sung Kim and Takehiro Funakoshi. Noting that Kim Jong-un has reached a dead end, Gov't said that at the top of their list is repatriating overseas North Korean workers and clamping down on malicious cyber activities. He also added that they will look for further action that can be taken to close the loopholes in the sanctions that are placed on North Korea, and said they're still open to talks.
We will strengthen our close communication and coordination to bring North Korea back to the path to denuclearization.
The U.S. nuclear envoy also said Washington remains committed to achieving denuclearization.
Our security commitments to our allies and partners are ironclad and unwavering, and we will continue to take steps to demonstrate our commitment to extended deterrence.
The three officials last met in person in Seoul this April. Thursday's meeting comes a day after North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles in an apparent protest against the arrival of an American nuclear ballistic missile submarine in South Korea, with the new Seoul-Washington security dialogue taking place for the first time on Tuesday. The regime also launched a solid-fuel ICBM last Wednesday. The talks also come at a sensitive time after an American service member crossed the inter-Korean border into North Korea, fleeing before being sent back home to face military discipline. 배은지, Arirang News.
Right, and the fate of the American soldier who bolted across the border into North Korea remains unclear. Now, this is according to U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller on Thursday, who refrained from a direct response to questions about whether North Korea had replied to U.S. requests for information on Travis King. He, however, pointed out that the White House, the State Department, the Pentagon are working together to ensure King's return to the U.S. and his family. In Ukraine, the southern city of Odesa has come under alarming air assaults by Russia in recent days following Moscow's decision to step back from a deal that supported the shipping of Ukrainian grain to global markets. Our Isingje has the latest.
Ukraine is struggling to defend its southern city of Odesa following 3 consecutive nights of attacks. According to Ukrainian Air Force, it destroyed just 5 of 19 cruise missiles overnight into Thursday, a far lower success rate compared to previous attacks targeting Kyiv. Ukrainian officials say it's due to less advanced defense systems operating in the southern regions of the country. The Russian Defense Ministry says these strikes were retaliation for the Ukraine's attack on the Crimean Bridge earlier this week, adding it targeted facilities linked with Ukraine's seaborne attack drones. However, Ukraine has refuted the claims, saying Moscow is targeting civilian infrastructure associated with grain exports, especially as it refused to renew its grains export agreement on Monday. Among the buildings damaged in the attack on Odesa was the Chinese Consulate General. A Ukrainian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said it's assessing the extent of the damage and offering any assistance needed. And according to UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned the sustained attack on Odesa. The spokesperson added that the attacks have consequences well beyond Ukraine, as a negative impact on global wheat and corn prices is already being seen. Meanwhile, the U.S. sanctioned more than 120 Russian and Kyrgyzstan firms on Thursday for what it said were their contributions to Russia's war on Ukraine. The U.S. State Department said the latest move would further cut off Russia's access to critical raw and manufactured materials, which finance the production of weapons. Also included in the list of those sanctioned is a North Korean who supported the Wagner group by helping with the shipping of weapons to the mercenary group. Isingje, Arirang News.
Lives were lost, people displaced and property damaged amid the recent rainfall, and Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho has pledged a comprehensive financial support plan for all those affected. Our Moon Hye-ryun covers his remarks.
The monsoon season, which has devastated the country for the past few weeks, caused significant damage to infrastructure, farmland and residential areas. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho addressed these problems and laid out a plan to support those affected at an emergency ministerial meeting on Friday. With more than 17,000 people being displaced from their homes due to heavy rain and over 2,000 still unable to return to their homes, the government will be using the budget set aside for natural disasters to fund the restoration of residential areas. Tax support for those affected will also be provided, such as a temporary extension of tax payment deadlines. Farmland was also heavily damaged in the downpours. Over 340 square kilometers of farmland was submerged in water, 6 times more than during last year's monsoon rain. For scale, this is the equivalent of nearly 50,000 soccer fields.
The government will come up with a sufficient compensation plan as quickly as possible by evaluating the damage and actively taking suggestions from those on site.
The plan includes funding for restoration to compensate for damaged crops and equipment, as well as for livestock killed in the flooding. Farmers affected will also be able to claim insurance within a month of claiming for their crops and land. And as a consequence of the flooding, prices of food products such as lettuce and chicken are expected to become increasingly unstable. The government will attempt to stabilize the supply chain by funding the replantation of vegetables in greenhouses. A tariff rate quota will also be introduced for 30,000 tons of chicken by August, along with the importation of 5 million fertilized chicken eggs and funding of around $62 million to increase stocks of chicks. Furthermore, people will be able to enjoy up to 30% discounted prices for products affected by the rainfall until the supply chain has been stabilized. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, wholesale prices fell for the third month in a row in June. According to the Bank of Korea on this Friday, the country's production price index, an indicator of future inflation, dropped 0.2% on month. The trend comes amid lower prices for industrial products such as petroleum, chemicals and basic metal products, despite jumps in electricity and gas prices. However, it remains uncertain whether the trend will continue, as prices of agricultural products are expected to rise this month amid the recent torrential downpours. Samsung and LG have topped a U.S. customer satisfaction survey for home appliances this year. According to global industry tracker JD Power on Thursday, appliances made by the two Korean companies scored the highest in 9 segments out of 12. The rankings were based on a study of over 20,000 customers who made purchases in the past year in 6 categories, including brand image, pathway to purchase, and problems encountered. Samsung and LG were praised for their side-by-side refrigerators, microwaves and washers, as well as dryers. Now, last year, the two companies ranked first in 6 out of the 12 segments. Establishing an environment for innovation is the first step to sharpening a country's edge over global competition. Accordingly, 7 regions nationwide will be granted government support to transform into special clusters for technological advancements. Our Lee Si-hoo explains.
The government has designated 7 regions across the country as what it calls special clusters for national advanced strategic industries to foster the growth of cutting-edge technologies, and into which it will invest 614 trillion Korean won, or around $483 billion. The announcement was made by the Office for Government Policy Coordination after being finalized at a related committee meeting presided over by Prime Minister Han Duck-soo.
The South Korean government will give all directional support for these special clusters to become global innovation areas with internationally overpowering production capacity.
The designated clusters are Yongin and Pyeongtaek in Gyeonggi-do Province, Gumi and Pohang both in Gyeongsang-buk-do Province, Cheonan and Asan in Chungcheongnam-do Province, Cheongju in Chungcheongbuk-do Province, the Saemangeum Coastal Region in Jeollabuk-do Province, and Ulsan Metropolitan City. 21 regions applied for the government designation and support, but only the 7 were selected, based on criteria such as the presence of innovative enterprises in the region, investment plans, and potential for growth. The clusters will focus on advancing technologies in semiconductors, displays, and rechargeable batteries, among others. The special clusters will receive, quote, a comprehensive support package, such as expedited government approvals, tax benefits, and budgetary support. Additionally, in the second half of the year, a pan-ministry council will be formed to provide a one-stop support service for the clusters. Meanwhile, the government also selected 8 universities, including Seoul National and Sungkyunkwan, to advance the cutting-edge technology required by these industrial clusters. To support them, the government is going to invest 54 billion Korean won to set up interdisciplinary curriculums and recruit talented teaching professionals. These moves follow a promise made by President Yoon Suk-yeol at an emergency meeting on the economy back in March.
오늘 발표된 국가 첨단 산업단지 조성이 신속하게 추진될 수 있도록 정부는 모든 노력을 다하겠습니다.
The government is also looking to expand the list of universities that it will support as it seeks to foster qualified talent that industries are looking for. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Korea's second moon mission following its lunar orbiter Danuri is a lunar lander to be launched in 2032. Now, this latest ambition begins with the making of next-generation launch vehicles to take that lander to the moon. Chang Won-ju has more.
South Korea plans to launch 3 next-generation space launch vehicles from 2030. After two preliminary launches in 2030 and 2031, the country hopes to send a lunar lander to the moon's surface in 2032. The next generation SLV will be more than 5 meters taller than the Nuri space rocket's 47.5 meters and also equipped with more powerful engines. Unlike Nuri, which has 4 75-ton engines in its first stage booster, the new SLV will be equipped with 5 100-ton engines. Nuri's second stage also uses a single 75-ton engine, but the new rocket will be equipped with 2 10-ton engines in its second stage. Based on a target altitude of 700 kilometers for its first launch, Nuri can carry a 1.9-ton satellite into Earth's orbit. The SLV's thrust-to-weight ratio is 3 times that of Nuri's maximum, enabling it to carry a payload of 1.8 tons into a lunar orbit, which is 380,000 kilometers away from Earth. The next-generation rocket also has improved engine efficiency by utilizing a different type of turbopump, which is used to inject fuel and oxidizer into a combustion chamber. Nuri emitted the gas used to run its turbopump as exhaust, but the next-generation launch vehicle recycles it through its engines.
Combustion occurs to operate the pump, but there's still the possibility for heat generation after that. It would be more advantageous in generating momentum to recover the remaining heat and send it to the combustion chamber again, rather than disposing of it.
The Ministry of Science and ICT plans to appoint a manager for the SLV project by next month. It also plans to select a private systems integration company to participate in the project from the initial stages of development in October. 정은주, Arirang News.
Threads is the latest online platform launched to rival Twitter as the app for real-time social interaction. So what has been the public response thus far? Arirang tells us.
We've seen one of the fastest sign-up rates for a social media app. It's Threads. While not social media, if we take ChatGPT as an example, it took 2 months to reach 100 million accounts. Threads reached that in less than a week. According to South Korean real-time data service WiseApp, more than 1 million people in South Korea signed up for Threads within 5 days of its launch. Threads is a text-based social network service that resembles Twitter. The app was built by the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, Meta, which means users can link the two social media apps, making it very easy for the 2 billion Instagram users to open a Threads account. Meta even said Threads will be, quote, powered by Instagram. And some recent controversial decisions made by Twitter and its owner Elon Musk have triggered some users to migrate to other apps, including Threads. In March, Twitter launched a new monthly and annually paid subscription service. Users also now need to pay to have a blue verification tick. So you have to pay to use Twitter without restrictions, as it limits you to read 1,000 posts a day for free.
This seems very timely, and I'm sure they've been working on it for quite some time, but this was perfect timing with just the latest sort of little fiasco on Twitter with Musk rate limiting users and all that stuff. So yeah, the timing was perfect, and so it's not too much of a surprise, as expected in a way, yeah.
A lawyer for Twitter, Alex Spiro, sent a letter to Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg accusing the company of engaging in, quote, systematic, willful, and unlawful misappropriation of Twitter's trade secrets and other intellectual property, demanding that, quote, Meta take immediate steps to stop using any Twitter trade secrets or other highly confidential information. But we might want to keep an eye on whether to find out if the arrival of Threads means the end of Twitter. Threads has not been released in Europe yet due to the Digital Markets Act, which bans U.S. big tech companies from dominating the European market. But there is a high possibility, experts say, that the service will be introduced there in a very short time. However, we have already seen that some new social media services come and go rather rapidly. For instance, Apple's Clubhouse, where people could communicate in audio chat rooms, went viral in the pandemic era. But with some social media services, the novelty wears off. As for Threads, users have complained that the app drains their batteries, so it still has some things to overcome to become a major player in the market. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. We begin in Belarus, as its defense ministry on Thursday confirmed that fighters from the Wagner mercenary group have begun training Belarusian special forces. The training is taking place at the Brest military range, just 5 kilometers from the border of NATO member Poland. The announcement comes a day after a video was released, appearing to show the mercenary group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin in Belarus, welcoming Wagner fighters. Poland, meanwhile, has increased defenses on its side of the border since the start of July, adding over 1,000 troops. And its defense ministry says it's ready for various scenarios. Russia has called Poland's move to up its border defense aggressive and a cause for concern. Iraq on Thursday expelled the Swedish ambassador in Baghdad over a diplomatic dispute involving the burning of the Quran in Stockholm. Iraq also recalled its charge d'affaires in Sweden and suspended business with Swedish companies. Hours earlier, Iraqi protesters stormed the Swedish embassy and set its compound alight. This comes after the Swedish courts, under the right of freedom to assembly, gave permission to anti-Islam protesters on Thursday to burn the Quran for a second time outside the Iraqi embassy in Stockholm. However, protesters this time did not torch the book, but kicked and stamped on it. Protesters had previously burnt the Quran outside Stockholm's main mosque in June. And finally, martial arts fans gathered at Hong Kong's Victoria Harbour on Thursday to mark the 50th anniversary of Bruce Lee's death. Meeting in front of a statue of the martial arts master, fans paid their respects and could be seen practicing his signature moves. Born as Lee Junfa in San Francisco in 1940, Lee was raised in Hong Kong. He got his start as a child actor and started learning kung fu when he was 13. He was best known in the 1960s and 70s for his martial arts talent and for fighting racist portrayals of Asians on screen. Lee died in 1973 from an allergic reaction to painkillers when he was 32. His death came just 6 days before the release of his most popular movie, Enter the Dragon. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It's Jungbok today, which is supposed to be the peak of the summer heat. And to live up to its name, most of Korea is experiencing another day of blistering temperatures with heat alerts remaining in place. Please drink plenty of water and avoid being outdoors during the hottest parts of the day. And also have a small umbrella handy in case of sudden showers. There will be passing rains of 5 to 40 millimeters in most inland areas. Sunny skies are boosting UV rays to very high levels on this sweltering Jungbok day, and afternoon highs in central regions are nearing 35 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Well, weather like we are seeing today, the combination of heat and high humidity can quickly cause heat-related illness, so take care of yourself. Meanwhile, Jeju Island will see monsoon rain returning late tonight. It will rain heavily on Jeju tomorrow, then on Sunday, it looks like it will pour down all day in central parts of the country on Odesa, the last summer season term, meaning big heat. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That ends our afternoon newscast, but do stay with us for our panel session coming up right after this break.